discoverability and development. Hopefully they can say it better than I can.
Thanks, Emma. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen so we can get started. Hopefully you can all see that now. Okay, so yeah, good afternoon. I'm Alex Mitchell. I'm the archivist at the University of Salford. And I'm here today with my colleague Jenny McNally, digital librarian, to talk about developing our offer of digital archive collections and enhancing their discoverability through Alma Digital. I'm going to start by giving you an overview of the project, and then I'll hand over to Jenny, who will talk you through the process. I'll then finish by outlining some of our expectations and aspirations for the future. So at Salford University, we've been providing access to digitised archived collections through our institutional repository USA for well over 10 years. Now, USA uses an ePrint open software, and that's designed to store research outputs and to make them discoverable. To date, we've got 7 digital archive collections available on USA. Some of these are straightforward digital versions of the physical collections that we hold. So in the case of the Richard Badnell papers, for example, that entire collection was digitised and uploaded onto USA. Other collections have been more consciously curated. An example of this might be the Worsley Newhall collection, which brings together material digitised from 3 institutions and members of the public. We also have 2 collections that we made publicly available on behalf of local partner organisations, namely the Working Class Movement Library and a private company, Peel Land and Property. In terms of file types, there's a mix of digital images, audio-visual material and sound recordings. So over the last 6 months, we've been working on expanding our digital offer as the pandemic highlighted the need for more and better access to digital content. And we wanted to extend the reach and dissemination of the existing collections. As a result, we've got 3 new collections that we want to make accessible. 2 of these collections have been digitised directly from our physical holdings, and these are the Student Union newspapers and the Stanley Horton collection. A 3rd collection is another curated collection done in partnership with Salford City Archives of architectural plans and drawings. So why have we decided to look beyond USA to host our digital archive collections? Well, remember that USA was not intended to provide access to digital archives, and because of this there are limitations to how we can use it to increase interaction with and coverage of our content. So whilst you can find content on USA, we found that the functionality of the viewer means that the users are unable to fully engage with the digital content. There's limitations to the file formats that it can support, and this could be an issue going forward as we develop our collections. Similarly, since the software is intended for research outputs, it doesn't really allow us to capture as a broader range of metadata as we would like. And finally, there's the fact that we wanted something that looks good and it looks modern and it looks slick and it fits with the image that we want to portray ourselves as the University of Salford. We've recently got a new university website and we want all of this to integrate and look as good as it possibly can. So I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Jenny, who will talk you through the process.
Thanks, Alex. So as Alex has described, we already had ePrints and we'd already had Alma. We were early adopters of Alma, and so we'd already got Alma Digital included in our subscription. And I'd kind of done little bits with it over the years to kind of work out what we could do with it, but this looked like a really good use of it and kind of would make most of our collections. So as we said, we had all the metadata and the files in ePrints. We'd got Alma Digital lined up. So the challenge was to work out how to move from ePrints to Alma. Have the next slide. So just a quick overview of kind of how we did it, and then I'll show you a bit about how it looks. So I started by exporting all the records from ePrints in, well, basically an ePrints version of XML. And I could have done stuff to kind of manipulate that and get it in the right format of XML, but I just found it much easier to work with importing it into Excel and then creating a CSV document with the metadata in the correct format, basically with the right headings that Alma could read. And also then used a simple PowerShell script to download all the image files from ePrints. So basically made a big bundle of all the metadata in the files all together. And then within Alma Digital, there's a built-in uploader which you use to add the records and the files. It's taken a little bit of getting used to and kind of getting used to what both the systems have done. We've done it with one collection earlier on, the Mike Craig collection, so I had a little bit of practice, but it just took a bit of working out a nice process to make it nice and easy to load them in. So there's various bits of functionality in Alma that has made it kind of nice to use and made sure that we can do what we need to with the files and the metadata. So we can add derivative and master copies and then control access as we need to. So for example, the derivative copies are kind of the public ones that anybody is allowed to access, and for some of them they're allowed to download, but we can restrict whether they can download them. So we can kind of make those openly available. Or the master copies are kind of the TIFFs, the kind of real high resolution files, which we only really want library staff to access. So again, we can restrict those and make sure that they're kind of nice and safely held. The records are held in collections, as Alex has talked about. There's 7 different collections at the moment. And you can also add images and descriptions for each collection, which makes it really, like, gives it nice context and kind of gives the user a bit of information before they start looking through the records and the files. Next slide, please. So yeah, I'll just talk you through how it's looking. We're not quite live with it yet, but it's almost there, I think. So this is what's called the collections lobby. It gives you a nice kind of way into the different collections, nice layout. As you can see, you've got the images there, and I wasn't quite brave enough to do a live demo of this, but if it was live, you'd hover over the images and it can give you the kind of the background to what the collection's about. Next one, please. So if you selected one of the collections, this is the photographic collection, it then gives you a kind of a gallery view. So a nice browsable collection. You can also search within that. So if you know there's a particular record in a particular collection or particular topic you want to look at in a collection, you can search from the top of the page there. Next one, please. It takes you to a kind of more information about it, and then from there you can click through. I think we might do a bit of work on this just to make sure we're really showing kind of the information that users need when they're looking at these type of records. Next one, please, Alex. And once you go in, select the viewer, you get a really kind of interactive way to access the images and other kind of documents. So you can zoom in and out, you can turn it around if you want to. You've got the information at the side there, and you're also able to add information about the copyright and license information. And then if you zoom in again, you'll get to, oh sorry, next slide please. So yes,
that's
this is
8
zooming
minutes. Jenny, sorry to interrupt, that's 8 minutes.
Thank you. So yes, one of the nice things for me doing this is that I've really been able to have a little dig around in the collection. Sometimes you don't get a chance to do that when you're doing kind of systemsy things, you're just looking at the files. So yes, one of the things I've learned is that Johnny Ball is a recipient of an honorary degree from Salford. So I can take that away from it. And there he is. I thought he was in Chock-a-Block, but he wasn't, I checked. And now I can't remember. Johnny Ball talks about, anyway, children of the 80s and 70s, you'll remember it. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that's sort of kind of a bit about how we did it, how it's looking. I'll pass back to Alex to talk about our plans for the future.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. Yeah, so that was the process that we went through. So looking forward, we're hoping to officially launch what we're calling Salford Digital Archives. That's a working title. Late this year, early next year, and that will be supported by an engagement plan. And once launched, the aim is going to be to attract new content, and we're particularly interested in collections that are curated in collaboration, either with individual academics and research projects, or with schools, or indeed sort of internal departments such as the University Art Collection. And we'd also like to sort of learn more and understand more about the functionality of this platform and the system, and how we can use any emerging features to, again, broaden the reach and use of the content that we have. Thank you very much.
That's lovely. Thank you, Jenny and Alex, for that talk. And store your questions up and remember to ask them at the end when we've had all of the other presentations. Thank you both so much. That was really interesting. Now let's welcome Ruth Burns from Manchester. Ruth is going to speak to us about crossing streams, the journey to create a cinematic content dashboard. Over to you, Ruth.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Ruth and I'm the Collection Development Data Coordinator at the University of Manchester Library. We've been obtaining streamed video options for cinematic content for a while now. We started using Canopy in March 2017 using a patron-driven acquisition system that could be accessed by staff and students with few barriers. But this became a victim of its own success. After we'd had to top up the allocated budget twice, in early 2020, we were forced to change the system to a mediated service to ensure that we were prioritising items for reading lists and for dissertation and research work. To try and reduce pressure on our incredibly busy reading list team, I took over triaging the streamed video requests, so when a request came in, I'd check it against our streaming services, which are mainly Canopy, Avon, Academic Video Online, or Avon, Digitalia, Box of Broadcasts, or Bob, and the British Film Institute subscription service, or BFI. Once upon a time, we bought physical content, and that content generally stayed bought. Nowadays, we license streamed video, and these licenses can run out, which sometimes comes as quite a shock to the lecturers who originally requested the item. Some systems keep the items available, but Canopy's default licenses are for 1 year only, and for BFI, they have a rolling access system. Sometimes the dates change, and we need to keep our lecturers up to date because they may be very unhappy if the film is still needed, and we may need to relicense or source alternatives. When I ended up triaging streamed cinematic content, it was less because it fitted in with my role specifically and more because I happened to have the capacity to do so at the time. But it wasn't long before I started asking myself how I could use the data to identify our resources and communicate more effectively to our lecturers about what was available. So my goal was to create a dashboard using Power BI that would be clear, useful, incorporate all our streaming services, and make it easy to see when films were being introduced or becoming unavailable. And some of the challenges here include the fact that the box of broadcast data just can't be extracted. This isn't really surprising because it's constantly changing, and while they could give me last year's download information, it was a missing essential fields. So there's no easy way to separate out the films from the news broadcasts or the TV features. BFI give us monthly reports, but they can't do much to alter those reports. So some of the fields I've requested for inclusion aren't available and have to be either manually added or extracted for anything we wish to use it for. We can extract Canopy, Avon and Digitalia data from our own ALMA system, but it has some odd glitches, and if we use all of it, it largely just slows everything down. Lack of remit's an issue because this project didn't start with a clear request to build something specific. If someone gives you unlimited Lego and says, build the best things, it's going to be harder to work out what to do than if you say, build the best boat or build the best castle. Without clear limitations, it's been hard to work out what to focus on with the data, and I've ended up having to prune the project back several times. And because the information we have is constantly changing with new Canopy purchases and with BFI's rolling schedule, it isn't automatically refreshed, and working out how best to keep it updated is another challenge. One of the biggest problems was trying to get all the data to work together and hunting for where fields don't do what you want it to or where the metadata has been input in different ways. Canopy, for example, lists their place of publication as California because that's where the company's based. But that means that place of publication can't be substituted for country of origin for the actual film, which we can do with several of our other services. Different systems display in completely different fashions, and a lot of my work has been metaphorically hitting the data with a hammer in order to normalize it so it would fit in place and work across the different streams. I've had to accept limitations. I optimistically named this project OmniFilm at the beginning because I wanted to include all of our streaming services in all of our films. At this stage, Demi OmniFilm is probably closer to where we are. For the moment, I've had to drop the Avon material for size and subject reasons. It's too big and it's mostly documentaries, and the box of broadcast material just can't be included at this stage. So for now, the focus needs to be on getting the project to work at smaller scale and then expanding it later rather than cramming everything in now. So here's the front page of the dashboard. I decided what we needed most was to limit the search for set criteria. So we can set the date range, or the search for summaries for keywords, search for title words or directors. We can search for language, and we can filter by country, as long as the item isn't supplied by Canopy. And it displays all the films that meet those mixed criteria in a truncated table below. Now, having everything on one page is useful because it means you can pick different criteria, but it does make everything a little bit cramped. So we have a second page to focus on geolingual searches. In addition to our current services, we're currently looking at setting up a trial with Klasiki because there's a new film course that's looking at Putin-era Russian films. So for this demo, I've filtered for films in the time range 2000 to present, and by either Russian language or by country of origin Russian Federation. And this has let us get right to the right range with just one search. The table can be expanded onto another page, or it can display hover text, or it can be exported. I've used color coding on the title to indicate the suppliers. Currently, blue is BFI, orange is Digitalia, and purple is Canopy. There is also an icon to indicate if the item is available to all the University of Manchester folk, in which case it's a green circle. If it's available to a limited group, BFI, for example, is only given to intensive film courses, it's a green flag. If it's not currently licensed, but we could get it, it's a grey or empty circle. And if it's currently unavailable, then it's a red cross. The hover text can also display any active course codes for items supplied by Canopy, Avon or Digitalia, which we draw out from the Leganto system. The next page of the dash shows the BFI items with upcoming availability changes, and this particular slide shows the difference between this month in the top graphic and the next 2 months in the lower graphic. You can see the films that are about to expire or arrive in the next few months. This has already been incorporated into our BFI update reports, which are circulated monthly to our academic liaison staff with cinematic content specialities, and then they decide if the information should be communicated on to the academics. So my original goal was to create a dashboard using Power BI that would be clear and useful and include all of our streaming services and show new and expiring films. And well, how have I done? It's clear to me, but I'm going to need to check with whether or not other people find it coherent as well. The BFI information has already proved useful, and I've hopes for the multi-filter searches. Unfortunately, we can't include all of our streaming services. It's simply not possible for Box of Broadcasts, and it currently doesn't hold all of Avon, although we can add that if we want to. And for showing when new films become available, this works for BFI, and we can expand it to include Canopy, but it will require regular updating. So what next? The project is nowhere near as expansive as I thought it was going to be at several points, but there are places we can expand it to. First of all is adding in the rest of the data. We can bring the Avon information into the mix. The main reason it's not there at the moment is because I wanted to get the dashboard as stable as possible before adding in its 78,000 records for Avon. We've got the updates to consider, and there's lots of options for what could be done there because Power BI has the option to run automatic updates, and that involves setting up APIs which have limitations on them, and various other complicated options we could use. And it may just be simplest to do a semi-manual update once a month. We also want to include in the Canopy expiry dates. We need to fix the small stuff. Canopy is currently missing a couple of available but unlicensed films that I happen to know they have, and I need to find out why that is. Is it because they weren't on the original updates and are now available, or is it because that there's a disconnection between the various records? So there's lots of little investigative things to make sure the system is doing exactly what we think it's doing. The academics with a lot of cinematic content ended up creating their own Google Doc in order to list what films they wanted. They'd just copy their reading list into it. And this had some issues because obviously it wasn't connected to the actual reading list system. So we didn't know when things were being changed on it unless we kept looking at it all the time. So we're hoping to encourage them to maybe, we're hoping to maybe encourage them to maybe move to Google Sheets, since that can be set up to notify me if somebody has changed it, and it will show me what changes have been made. So that has potential for much more control over our communications with the academics without additional work on their part. And that may be something that can be incorporated into the Omnifilm project. And then we have to look at what comes out of actual real life usage. At the moment, I've been building and improving this resource, but apart from the BFI updates, it hasn't really been used much in the real world. So I need to get people using it and asking questions to see what would be most helpful for them. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Ruth. That was really interesting. And again, we'll look forward to some questions about that at the end of the next session. Thanks again for that. So we'll move on now to Kelly and Ben, Kelly Hetherington and Ben Taylorson from Durham University, who are going to talk about their library and collections blog. Over to you guys.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can see that and hear me. Yes, we're going to be talking about the Durham University Library and Collections blog, creating a new voice for our services. First of all, let me introduce my colleague, Kelly Hetherington.
Hi, I'm Kelly Hetherington and I'm the repository officer at Durham University, so I manage the day-to-day running of our repository.
And I'm Ben Taylorson. I'm the faculty librarian for Durham University Business School, so I liaise between the library service and the business school. So the first question, quite logically, is why a blog? Well, we had existing methods of communication. We can see some examples of those here. So top left is the news page of the library's website. Dialogue is the university's magazine or e-zine that we publish in, usually on a weekly basis, the latest library news. And we've got things like social media as well that you can see there. Other things we'd have would be departmental comms that as a faculty librarian I would usually be involved in, so sort of round robin emails, things like that. But what we felt was that there were a few issues with these as regards perhaps the type of message that we might want to get across. So they're very formal, some might say dry, others might say boring. They're very information fact-based, so there's no room for opinion or personal insight. They're very service focused. There's no insight about what we do and why we do it. Perhaps it's more about sort of the finished product or what we provide. There's no insight as to how the decisions are made and why we come to them. It can be quite off-putting when you're talking always in a very professional and impersonal tone. It can be quite intimidating, particularly to students who are new. And it serves to put a distance between us and our users. Also, the existing methods of communication didn't really lend themselves well to a longer or sort of more reflective piece of communication. So what we wanted to do was create a voice that was more professional, more personal, albeit professional. We wanted the opportunity to talk about things that were maybe from a social or professional development point of view, as well as things that we did just related to the final service. We wanted to show people what they necessarily didn't see. So our users who both physical and online will perhaps only be engaged with certain elements of the service, and we wanted to take the opportunity to maybe show them more about what we did in parts of the service that they didn't see and how that kind of thing happens. We make decisions in certain ways, and I'm not always certain that people understand why that is. And I think it can only be of a benefit to us if people have a greater understanding of why we do the things that we do. And also that librarians can, despite the stereotype, be fun. And we do lots of fun things, and we wanted to show people all of those. A quick run through of some of the things that we've got on this page. Basically a very quick way of showing you the breadth of things that we do and the kind of thing we wanted to get across in our first few posts. So we've got, moving from left to right, first of all, we've got our cousins library there. And if you look very, very closely, you can see there are tennis balls on the bottom of the tables. It's to show the various different ways in which we move and use everyday objects to be sort of ingenious with making sure things don't get damaged. The second picture along is when I did an activity with some school children, which was escape packs. They had to, in order to get to the next layer of the pack, they had to run around the library and, well, walk quietly around the library and find different clues. It was utter carnage, but very enjoyable. There's me working from home in a post that we put out soon after lockdown to show that we were still there and still serving people who needed our help. The fourth pick along is someone repairing one of our manuscripts using Japanese paper. And then we've got Billy B and Bill Bryson. So our mascot, Billy B, and the person, our former chancellor, whom our main university library is named after, Bill Bryson. So all of it lends well to nice pieces on the blog. And this is the blog itself. So for this, we used WordPress. There was no acceptable internal method. WordPress was great because it was, we were free to adapt an established platform and choose a template that suited us. We chose a very, well, some would say a very basic template, but it's exactly what we wanted. It's accessible. You can see it allows us to arrange our posts and tag them and link them into various different categories. And for all, we are up for adapting the way in which it appears. We're quite pleased with the way in which it's accessible and clear and easy to use. Behind the scenes of the blog, we wanted it to be voluntary, so only those who wanted to be involved. As you can probably imagine, when it comes to volunteering to add more work to your already busy workload, we didn't necessarily get a great deal of volunteers, but we did get a small team. There are about 6 to 8 of us who work on the blog, and happily from all over the service. I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. We get guest posts from people elsewhere in the library and beyond as well, as Kelly will mention. And we're pleased that effectively has given us the opportunity to have voices from all over library and collections. And to illustrate that, you can see here we have various different sites on the left for our modern collections, and then on the right at the top there you've got one of our museums, because we have museums as part of our library and collection service. That's the Oriental Museum in Durham, and then the Cousins Library there, which is indicative of our archives and special collections that we have. We also have a learning team as well, who work sort of with school children and with sixth formers, introducing them to sort of the realities of academic life as well. So it's it's a large and varied library service that we have. So I've talked about how we set up the blog, and to talk more about what it looks like now that it's live is I'm going to hand over to Kelly.
Thank you. So the blog covers every aspect of library and collections life. So we do regular DU-Lib introducing posts, which allow library users to see there's a lot more going on behind the scenes and get to know the people who are helping them. We get our interns involved, so they provide regular updates, and we hope that kind of provides future interns with a sense of what the job could be like and the different paths a library career can take. We have the bottom right picture is one of our 5 from the Hive. So we've got a bit of a bee theme going on in the library, and for that post, our some librarians chose their favourite fictional librarians. So a bit of fun kind of going on there. We've got guest posts. So the haiku post there is from Liz Mitten, who's a northern writer with Jamaican roots. And she hosted a workshop in collaboration with the Cousins Library that Ben mentioned earlier. So that was a great way of kind of promoting that. When we run a particular campaign, we can use the blog to demonstrate the benefits. So the Liberate My Library scheme was a popular campaign to allow university members to make recommendations of books we should buy to diversify our collections. And then we wrote a blog post kind of showing what we did. And every year, my team hijacks the blog for Open Access Week, and we use it to promote our events and services. We also try to show our more human side through the blog posts. So the 15 Minutes of Fame post here actually relates to Ben, who started tweeting about crisp sandwiches earlier this year and went viral. And that culminated in an appearance on This Morning. So Ben wrote about that. We've got a snowman joke, which relates to Christmas wellbeing activities that we did for staff during COVID. And finally, our museum staff do a lot of work with the local community. So the blog can be used to promote these events. So that picture there is a blog post that I wrote with one of our learning team members. And that's My Children Enjoy in one of our community events. So how has it been received? As the tweet there shows, our academics support it, and their endorsement actually kind of helps extend our reach. And we've had feedback that it's been used in schools to support lessons. We've had it mentioned in job interviews that people have found the blog and they've learned a little bit more about what it is like to work at Durham University Library through that. And it's a great way to kind of keep in touch with our colleagues and find out what other members of our service are doing, especially during COVID. We've got some stats, so we've got quite consistent readership, some months over 1,000 views. It did drop off a bit during COVID, but we did have a really popular post with the warm welcome, which was about kind of the new freshers starting last year. So it does show that people are engaging with it. And we also have an international audience, so it's not just people at Durham who are looking at it, so we are getting some reach out there. And finally, plans for the future. We're hoping to do more posts now that hopefully we've kind of COVID, we're hoping that it's the worst of it's over. We're hoping that we'll be doing more things, and we'll therefore be able to do more posts. Promotion within the wider library community through events like today, and hopefully get more of our colleagues at Durham on board as well. And there's a link to the blog there as well. And that's me finished.
That's lovely. Thank you, Kelly and Ben. So if all the presenters would like to turn the cameras back on, we'll turn to questions now, if everybody's ready. So as mentioned, if you would like to use the raise your hand function initially to ask a question, and then we'll come to you, and if you could turn your mic on to ask that question. Is there anything anybody would like to ask? Bill Ayres, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, hi, it's Bill from the University of Manchester here. A question for Alex and for Jenny on this one. You mentioned that you're going to be engaging with academics to bring them on board to add collections potentially. I just wondered whether that's going to be something that you're going to reach out to them, or whether you've already got people interested in doing that with you.
Hi Bill, thanks for your question. Yeah, I mean, there's a few directions that we can take. We definitely think that once it's launched and we promote it in the right way and demonstrate what it can be used for, then that will attract more interest in terms of the academics. We have got a couple of things in the pipeline as well, with having conversations with various academics as well. But I think it's once it's launched and they can see how it could work and what the potential is, it would just be a lot more powerful for us to go to them and and hopefully get them on board.
Great, very interesting. Thanks, Alex.
I'll try muting myself. Thanks, Alex and Bill. Are there any other questions anyone would like to ask? Okay, not for now. So remember though that you can continue to liaise with one another in the channels in the team. So there's the general channel, the Cake and Chat channel, and we will be posting the recordings of the sessions afterwards. So perhaps, and also the slides. So perhaps if you don't want to ask questions here, but think of something afterwards, you can contact the presenters directly to ask them about it. So thanks everyone for those presentations. They were really interesting. Got us off to a flying start with the conference. We're really grateful to you. So now moving on, the next part of the programme is going to head into a break, and the next session will start at 3:15. That's our second set of parallel sessions. After that, we have the sponsor presentation at 4:15. We'd be really grateful if everybody would attend, because we're very grateful to our gold sponsors, Adam Matthew Digital, for sponsoring this event, and they've got some interesting things to tell us at 4:15. And then after the sponsor session, we've got the inaugural quiz, which will be great fun. My colleague John, who's looking after the tech quiz in this session, he's our quiz master, and I understand he's famous for his quiz mastering, so don't miss that one. And then we'll finish off at 5 o'clock with some closing comments from Rosie Jones, our ALM chair. So thanks everybody, especially the presenters, for coming along to this session, and we'll see you at the next sessions at 3:15.
Thanks, Emma.
Thank you.